Let's go.
Hi guys, welcome to another edition of the Masters Fantasy Football League's Dynasty Spotlight Series. Before we hop into today's show, as always, we want to, tell everyone how good Dynasty Leagues are. Truly the best way to play fantasy football. If you haven't joined any, we're actually starting one up right now, so go ahead and hop on in, see what the fun is, and join part of the Masters Fantasy. If you have already played, don't be afraid to add another one to the list. It's a good time of year to get in.
Absolutely.
There's some opportunities you can take advantage of. Some guys are going to get overdrafted because of the playoffs or underdrafted because of the playoffs. So
That's true.
Kind of a good time to get started. So check out the new league, and I guess let's hop into today's show. We're going to talk about another receiver. We got Terrace Marshall out of LSU. He's a taller, skinnier guy, about 6'3", 200 is what we've seen him listed at.
Mm-hmm.
Lot to be excited about, lot to unravel in part of his game, so the doc's going to break it down a little more for us.
All right. So, Terrace Marshall is a guy that's kind of been overshadowed. I mean, he had to play opposite Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson a year ago when LSU won the national championship. And then this year was just a weird year. He didn't end up finishing the whole season, I don't think. And then Jamar Chase obviously sat out. So it was kind of his show, but it wasn't the same offense that it was a year ago. Terrace Marshall, he's a guy that's got that prototypical build you really want from a receiver. He's got that good height. He's a little lean, a little thin, but he makes up for it with. He's pretty physical when he goes up and gets the ball. I like that about him. Not to mention, he's got really good speed for a guy of his size. I mean, the size-speed combination is really good, and it's something that not a whole lot of guys have, especially in this draft too. Which is why I feel like he's probably pushing into the first round in a lot of mock drafts. There's a lot of questions about his route running, and I think he's had some instances of good route running, and then there's other times where he kind of disappears from a game because he struggles to get open there. I don't know that I'm super concerned about that. I think Marshall's a really good player, and I think he'll refine that technique a little bit, because at the end of the day, he's got the size, the speed, and the work ethic. So there's a lot to like with him, and I think he's going to develop into a nice pro. He was a really hard guy to pick out a pro player count for. I ended up landing on Martavis Bryant just because I feel like they've got a similar build. Bryant's a little bigger. Their game's a little more predicated on speed and their size versus just like elite route running and just big physical receivers. They're kind of in between there, where their height and speed are around the same. And hopefully Terrace Marshall sticks around a little longer than Martavis Bryant did. But that's who I came up with. Again, he's kind of hard to pick a comp for just because of his style of play, and not many guys have that same build as him.
Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely a unique player, as a lot of these guys we're going to talk about are. It's hard to compare someone to just one guy, but a name that came to my mind was Robbie Anderson. Another guy about 6'3", maybe 200 pounds, who wins with his speed, but also can decent route runner and just a good football player at the end of the day. Can make some plays. Maybe even a Marquez Valdez scaling, guys like that. Some taller receivers who can they can fly down the field, make some big plays, and be a deep threat as well as a red zone threat. One of the things I liked about him is I thought, especially in the red zone, his route running did actually look pretty good. He was able to get some separation in short spaces and make some contested catches as well. So I definitely could see him get on the field early as a rookie. Even if he's not starting day one on the outside, getting some red zone opportunities and just kind of evolving as the year goes on and having his role expanded on. I guess with that, we'll hop into some landing spots. For me, the Jets were someone who came to mind. Talking about Robbie Anderson, that was a guy who was a New York Jet for several years before he went out to Carolina. Whether it's Sam Darnold or somebody else throwing passes, we know they've got some extra picks this year, so I think they're definitely going to take a receiver. They did take Denzel Mims a year ago, who can play on the outside, but I think that Jamison Crowder kind of has the slot position locked down. It also sounds like they could be interested in Juju Smith-Schuster. I saw that today. So I do think in terms of the draft, they really should look more for perimeter receivers, whether it's helping Sam Darnold or, maybe it's Justin Fields, maybe it's Zach Wilson, maybe it's Trey Lance, could be anyone. But I think the Jets are someone who could really use them, and I think would be a decent spot for him. Probably get paired with a young quarterback.
Right. Yeah, I like that a lot. I really do. For me, I was bouncing back and forth between a couple of teams, but the one I think was a really good landing spot and kind of fit into where he's being slotted in these mock drafts is the Baltimore Ravens. I think he'd be a perfect complement for Hollywood Brown. He's got that good enough speed too, and then the ability to go up and get the ball too is something that they don't have as well. They either have the speed in Hollywood Brown or the physicality of a guy like a Miles Boykin or a Mark Andrews, but they don't really have the guy like Terrace Marshall that can kind of do both at a high level. I think he'd fit into that offense really well and give Lamar Jackson another much-needed weapon. And another one I thought about, it's weird because we just did Kadarius Toney. Go check out that episode. But Kadarius Toney, I've seen him mocked to the Chiefs a lot, and to me that doesn't make any sense just because you can't really add another small, fast... Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, maybe they do it. I just don't really see it. To me, I feel like Terrace Marshall is actually the better fit in Kansas City because I feel like that's something, again, that they don't really have. And he still has enough speed to kind of fit into that offense where they love being vertical and having speed on the field at all times and at every position. But again, he gives you that opportunity for those red zone targets and the ability to go up and get balls where it's not just Travis Kelce being your only big receiver out there. So those are a couple spots I really liked for him.
Yeah, I like those spots as well. I think the Chiefs one's definitely interesting because it was on the NFL Network. Bottom line, I saw, I don't know if it was Bucky Brooks or whose mock draft it was, but yeah, I saw Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs the other day.
I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of scratched my head. I was thinking, obviously they have Tyreek Hill. Just 2 years ago they invested highly in Mecole Hardman. Do you really need another weapon like that? I mean, I guess too many weapons is never a bad thing, but I actually think you want a diverse skill set of receivers, and I think absolutely Terrace Marshall brings a different skill set.
Right. I just think he's a better fit.
Yeah,
for them.
Absolutely. So with that, we usually get into where we see him getting selected in upcoming Masters rookie drafts this summer. So assuming he goes to a spot we like, where could you see yourself taking Terrace Marshall?
So Terrace Marshall, to me, I mean, I'm going to say probably late first round is where he ends up. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if he got drafted a little higher if he ended up in a place like Kansas City. They have that effect on guys. Even Baltimore, it might not be the best on paper. It's not like a Kansas City where you're like, oh my gosh, Lamar Jackson's an elite thrower of the ball. But, I think there's a lot of potential there. And, if Lamar grows too, I mean, that would be huge for Terrace Marshall. So that being said, yeah, I think probably late first is where he ends up. And again, this is a guy that if he gets taken in the first round, I mean, he's got to go in your first round of rookie drafts, you would think.
Yeah, it is crazy because, a lot of these really talented receiver class. I mean, that's kind of just the headline there. We've talked about a lot of guys so far on our Spotlight series. Pretty much all of them have been, potential NFL draft first rounders and therefore potential Masters first rounders. And yeah, I think Terrace Marshall's another one of those guys. Late first is where I could easily see him going. And, it's going to be interesting because out of all the guys we've talked about so far, I think he's probably last on my list, but I don't even mean that in a bad way. We've just talked about some really talented receivers. But yeah, it'll be fun. We'll have to do some Dynasty rookie mock drafts.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I feel like, we've said late first for a lot, and there's only so many late first picks.
Right, yeah, that's very true.
But we're also talking about, good case scenario, good draft spot. So with all that being said, I think, of course, late first is likely.
Yeah.
Which leads us into our next question. Do you think he'll be fantasy relevant in 3 to 4 years?
That's an interesting one because I feel like Terrace Marshall is one of those guys that I think he's boom or bust as a prospect. Whereas, like we had just talked about Kadarius Toney on the last episode and how he's going to have boom or bust games, I think Terrace Marshall, he's either going to be really, really good or just kind of average. And I think when we think about the player comps too, they're all kind of in that spot too, where they're either, Martavis Bryant, for example, he had spots where he was absolutely amazing, but then, off the field stuff tapered his career away. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's had his games, but is he what they thought he was going to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
They've been asking for receivers forever.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I don't want to say definitively no, because I think he'll be relevant to an extent, but my gut's telling me that I don't think he's going to be an elite receiver in this league. I just think he's going to be another guy. And I'd love for him to prove me wrong, and he easily could because he's got the tools to, but I don't know. I don't see it. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I kind of love that answer because that's the exact same direction I was going. Anytime you're trying to think of pro player comps for a guy and you're really struggling to come up with comps, it's usually not a great sign. Now, his skill set is unique in the sense that he could actually be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a higher probability he's just going to be okay and kind of not phase out of the league real quick. But in terms of true fantasy relevance, yeah, probably just going to be more like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 most years. Could he have a couple years where he's a high-end wide receiver 2? Sure. My comp was Robbie Anderson, who for most of his career was, relatively disappointing. I don't know if that's a good word, but then this past year, he goes to Carolina and has some success. Now, do I think he's going to be as productive this coming year as he was last year? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
But maybe, so do I think Terrace Marshall will be really fantasy relevant? No. Do I think he'll be a little fantasy relevant? Sure.
Yeah.
But don't want to completely write him off because he could prove us wrong.
Yeah, like I said, he's got the natural tools. If he tightens up his route running and all those things, those little nuances of the game, I mean, he's going to be a real problem. But that's a tough thing to develop.
Yeah, one other thing I want to bring up too in terms of just kind of long-term fantasy relevance and guys that you want to invest in. It was actually one of our listeners commented that he likes to both running backs and receivers, like 200 plus pounds is a big threshold for him. Mm-hmm. And I know your height and weight, in terms of BMI, the taller you get, all that. I know the doc knows plenty.
Yeah.
But with Terrace Marshall, I said he's 6'3", 200. My gut feeling is he's going to weigh in less than that. And it just kind of, not that he can't be successful, but if I'm, putting my chips in a basket, I want someone who's a little thicker, who just looks like they can hold up in the league a little better. A lot of these young dynasty receivers who have really come on strong, we're talking about A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, who are some other hot commodities right now. Even your DJ Moores. A lot of these guys are over 200 pounds, a little more physical. And, once again, not saying Terrace Marshall can't succeed, but is he who I want to select with my first round in the Dynasty? I don't know. I think I might go elsewhere. Rashad Bateman to me is just a guy who just looks a lot more built for the league.
Right.
But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Again, he could prove me wrong. I do think he's a good talent and
ton
has
of potential.
A lot of potential and could end up being really good. But yeah, out of all the receivers we've talked about so far, I think he might be the least likely to hit for me so far. I don't know. Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that too. Yeah, and it's close too. I mean, again, he's got the talent, but right now, I feel the same way.
But Terrace, if you're listening, we still like you.
Yeah.
We like you. We think you got potential, but
I'd love for you to prove me wrong because I actually love your game a lot.
Yeah. Please do.
Yes.
Also, Terrace, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button, just like all you listeners out there.
Yeah.
Feel free to leave comments. We've done a lot of these so far. We're looking to do more, but if there's anyone you're itching to hear us talk about, feel free to leave in the comment section. We'll be sure to do a show on them.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get fun because we've hit on a lot of the big name obvious prospects. So and this is where we go into the gems, so to speak.
Yeah.
Anybody you can think of mid rounds, late rounds that you're interested in, we'd be sure to take a look at them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you got any small school prospects who we may have even never heard of, throw their names out there. We love checking out. We love checking out some tape on some guys we've never even heard of coming from small schools. That's about all I got for today's show. Like I said, we got a Dynasty League filling right now. Join it. A lot of fun. Can't say that enough.
Absolutely.
Got over 600 leagues here at Masters. Have not folded a single one.
Not one.
We're going to add plenty more this year, too. So if you missed this one, not the end of the world. We'll get you another one later. But that's all I got for today's show.
All right. All right, guys. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening.